Hey guys, I did this 5 minutes ago and my internet cut out, so here we go, round two. Wellness Wednesday, nice to see you again, or for more to the point, you to see me. But if you're watching this live, please ask questions as I go along. And if you're watching the replay, please hashtag replay and ask questions as well. And no question is a silly question. Let me just make that really, really clear. If you are watching this and it's attracted you because you're struggling with acne, please ask, because if you are thinking it, someone else will be thinking it as well. And the more people that ask, the more people will benefit from it. So I just wanted to welcome you, say Happy Wellness Wednesday for those of who are at the moment who are in restrictions, stay-at-home orders, sending you love, and a lot of what we're going to talk about today is very relevant for that as well. Given that there's a lot of stress situations, I guess, happening in the world at the moment, and I think it's more important than ever that we're looking after ourselves and that we are not falling down the slippery slope of bad habits and getting into the vortex of this negative energy ball, which is really easy to do, like going down the rabbit hole and getting caught up in the fear and stuff. It's really important. And what I'm going to talk about today, one of the big things is stress. So we need to be able to regulate ourselves, even if we don't have skin conditions. And if you're struggling with a hormonal condition, this also applies to you, but specifically today we're focusing on skin, but everything I am talking about, for the most part, is also going to be very applicable to a lot of you watching if you're struggling with hormonal issues. So as I go along, please ask questions, and no question is a silly question. So there's three things that can really, from an acne point of view, make acne worse. And I'm just going to expand on these. The first one is sugar, which I've written up here on my lovely whiteboard. The second one is stress, and the third one is picking. And so I'm just going to go through these three things today and really nut them out and expand and give you some insights into them as to why they're making your skin worse. And a lot of the time we hear these things and we know these things, but my own experience and my theory is, information is power, but sometimes we've got to hear things 10, 20 times before they actually drop in and really hit home, and we've realised we've got to make a change. And a lot of the stuff that I share with you guys is very similar regardless to what situation you're in terms of what condition. And acne is definitely, from a hormonal point of view, one of those conditions that can be so debilitating and so frustrating, but there are some universal truths among hormonally balancing that really do apply. And I know it can be really frustrating if you're having breakouts and you're trying everything and you're trying different things, and there's this vicious cycle that happens, so I'm going to talk about that as well. And I've been there and I've done that. Now, for those of you who don't know me or have only just joined this group, I'll just give you a bit of a background about myself. My background is I got into the health space with my own health journey. I had a catalyst that really slapped me around almost 11 years ago now, where I had a tumour. I was rushed to hospital one day with back pain, and I had a tumour in my kidney, and 5 days later my kidney had to come out. I lost my whole kidney, and I was put on this completely different path of asking questions, going, why did I get sick? Why did I get this really rare cancer? It was a malignant type of tumour. I didn't have to have any other treatment, and I was very lucky for that. But I definitely was put into that basket of, oh, but you were so healthy at the time, and even though I was so healthy, which is something I'm hearing a lot at the moment. People, oh, she was so healthy and she got sick or whatever. When really the reality is I wasn't healthy at all. And I thought I was healthy, but I wasn't emotionally healthy. Didn't know how to regulate my nervous system. I was deficient. I had gut issues. There was lots of vitamins and nutrients that were very deficient, and there was a lot of things that were going on underneath the surface that would not have been picked up in mainstream medical until they get to the point where it's extreme and acute, and it's an emergency, which is what happened to me. And so, if I hadn't have had that experience, it will be 11 years this October. I think I need to have some sort of like party. It sort of slipped by last year at the 10-year anniversary, and I did celebrate it, but not in the way that I thought I would when I got to the 10-year mark. So maybe this year I should. But if that hadn't have happened, I wouldn't have had this catalyst for asking questions, and it was a big shift. I recently got my astrology chart done, and for those of you who are into astrology, it was like the lady was saying to me, yeah, you're going to have big health changes, you're going to have your health awakening or your big awakening quite young so that you can then go and teach people. And I was like, already had it, just had it, and I hadn't told her anything, and I said, this is what happened. And she's like, okay, well, there you go. That confirms it. So at 26, had my kidney out, had this tumour, and was really left to my own devices. 2 years later, I came off the oral contraceptive pill because I'd started then going on this health and wellness journey of looking after myself. Started to go, why did I get sick? I need to change things up. I need to work on things. I need to heal. And went off the oral contraceptive pill and had crazy post-pill acne. And it took me about 9 months to even get a period. And I had acne even when I was on the pill as I was going off it, and I didn't get any help or support, and I didn't come underneath and really support myself either before I went off it. I just went off it cold turkey, and then I went and sought help. And I was just starting to study nutrition. No, actually. Yeah, I had gone off it, and I hadn't even started studying it. So then I started to study and was like, okay, why am I struggling with this so much? This is ridiculous. And skin is my weak point, and it has definitely been a big challenge for me. And when I'm not looking after myself or I'm extremely stressed, it's definitely where it comes out. It's even to the point where my skin is sensitive to different products. If I change a product too quick or things like that, it can be very sensitive. So I understand the pain and the frustration if you're watching this and you have if you're struggling with acne and you're like, I'm just over it, because I get it. It can be so frustrating. But there's 3 big things that I know make a massive impact to people, and they can be a vicious cycle. So the first one is unregulated blood sugar levels. Now, I'm going to explain why. Now, we all hear sugar's not good. There's people talk about chocolate, but chocolate not being good for acne and da-da-da. But you got to break it down and go, okay, well, what is it in these things that people say aren't good for acne that are actually causing a reaction to cause the acne to be worse, cause the breakouts to be worse, the infections to be worse in the hair follicle, which is what we're talking about. And a lot of the time it's with acne in particular, there's a hormone called insulin growth factor 1. And when this elevates, this then causes more testosterone in the top layers of in our skin to be produced. It's actually an enzyme, and then this type of testosterone gets made, and it causes more sebum to be made, causes more keratin to be made, and it causes inflammation. And so it's like the perfect storm when it comes to acne. And so anything that is going to raise our blood sugar levels will increase insulin, and then will increase IGF-1. Okay, so we want to get on top of anything in our diet that is actually going to increase IGF-1, because IGF-1 will cause more sebum to be produced, then more keratin, and more inflammation in the skin or in general, and so in the body, and there is an underlying driver of inflammation with acne, but also this production of extra oil, and what happens is you get extra oil, more skin cells, and then there's and bacteria, and they mix, and there's an infection in the hair follicle. That's basically what happens, right? So we've got this combination of going, how do we stop congestion, and how do we stop too much sebum being, how do we regulate the sebum production, and so that we're not getting as many breakouts. And sugar is going to be one of the number one things that we want to reduce, and quitting sugar. I don't even like using that term now because it's, the whole I quit sugar thing, but and I don't have anything against Sarah Wilson, and I love her stuff, but it's it really is one of the drivers for insulin growth factor 1, and we've got to get on top of that. And so sugar and wheat and carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, so flours, too many grains, those types of things, and anything processed in a packet that is high in sugar or high in carbohydrate, just refined, is going to spike our blood sugar levels. And wheat is the main contender for this when I talk about refined carbohydrates, and so is sugar. So if we're having a diet that's high in wheat, high in sugar, we're going to have insulin levels raised, and IGF-1 will increase. The other thing that will increase it is dairy, and dairy will also increase inflammation. And when I'm talking about dairy, I'm predominantly talking about cow's milk. Some people are okay on sheep's and goats, and other people aren't. Like a little bit of sheep's cheese, a little bit of goat's cheese, a little bit of goat's milk, which I think is foul. Tastes disgusting. It's like, tastes like a goat. Personally don't like it, but whatever floats your boat. So love goat's cheese, don't like goat's milk. If you haven't tasted it, don't worry, you're not really missing out. That's my opinion. So dairy will increase IGF-1, and so anyone with insulin resistance, which is what we're talking about. So insulin resistance, just to back up a bit, is basically when insulin is a hormone, and it allows glucose to go into the cell. I should draw this. Here's our cell. Can you see that? Yeah. Insulin's like the little key, and glucose is here. Insulin comes along and it opens up the pathway for glucose to go in. That's cutting the story short. Like, that's the abbreviated version, but that's basically what happens. When we're insulin resistant, it basically means we need way more insulin to get that same amount of glucose into the cell, and it's like they're a bit deaf. The cells are a bit deaf. They can't, the receptors aren't as sensitive to the insulin, so it takes a lot more to get the glucose into the cell, okay? And this ultimately, if left untreated and is really extreme, can lead to type 2 diabetes. So that is the way that I explain it. But the other way I like to explain it is going, okay, well, think of someone who's inside, has the TV on really loud, and someone's knocking at the door, and because the TV's on really loud, they can't hear, so they've got to knock out louder, or they've got to get more people to knock on the door so someone can actually hear. And so that's what we're happening with insulin resistance, and it causes a whole lot of range of problems, because raised insulin then will cause other hormones to be thrown out of balance. And so we've got to regulate the amount of insulin that's being produced so that we're regulating a lot of other reactions in the body, okay? And so you really got to quit the sugar in particular to address the insulin resistance. Now, a lot of us have sugar addictions. That is not a lie. And I have been one of those people, and I've got to really be careful. I'm just talking from my own experience. I know what it's like because it's a slippery slope. And if you are a naturally sweet-toothed person and you lean more towards the sweet side of things, you can still be insulin resistant and be more on the salty carbohydrate thing. But sugar will have a real effect with acne. And if you remove wheat and dairy from your diet first, it is a lot easier to quit sugar than if you are still eating wheat and dairy, and both of those are going to cause your insulin to go up. So my recommendation for people is to remove wheat and dairy first. Maybe if you've got acne, do dairy and then wheat, just slowly cut back, but you want to really reduce and get rid of them all, both out of your diet, and then reduce the amount of sugar. If you are still on insulin, on wheat and dairy, it will be hell of a lot harder to quit sugar. And so when we're looking at sugar addictions, it's like, okay, do you crave sugar? How do I know if I've got a sugar addiction? Okay, do I crave sugar? Do I emotionally need sugar? Like if I'm having an emotional response, like a stress response, or I'm feeling high emotional, am I leaning on sugar to numb out, or I feel like I need it to soothe me? Do I hide sugar from people that I live with and love about? So family, friend members, like am I hiding the amount of sugar I'm eating? Like, am I sneaking it? Do you feel pissed off at me right now because of what I'm saying? Because I'm telling you that you've got to quit sugar. If you've got a skin condition, that's probably an indicator as well that you have a bit of a sugar addiction, because you're like, no, don't take away my sugar. It's the same when I say don't, get off the coffee. And people who are addicted will be like, no, don't take my coffee away from me. So it's, if you answer yes to those questions, like just start to get, there's a little bit of a come to Jesus conversation that's got to happen to yourself, with yourself, about where you're actually at, and the reality that you've got stuff that you've got to clean up in your diet in order to address your hormonal imbalances, okay? And if you want to quit the sugar and address the insulin resistance, you need a plan and you need support. Doing it on your own is very, very hard. You need someone to look at what you're doing and going, okay, these are the things we can tweak. What is it that I need in my diet? Do I need more protein? Do I need more fat? Do I need more vegetables? Are you also getting enough sleep? Are you managing your stress? Have you got adequate amounts of magnesium in your diet? Supplementation with magnesium is very helpful. Quitting sugar, FYI, is not the same as going low carb, and I think people get confused about this. You can still have root vegetables and fruit, not too much fruit, but a lot of like root vegetables like carrots and sweet potatoes and things like that, which aren't low carb but aren't going to aren't going to be as highly addictive and going to keep you fuller with fiber and stuff, as opposed to refined sugar. Okay, intermittent fasting is always a really good tool to use with when you're quitting sugar. I found this very helpful, and eating in an 8-hour window can be very helpful to improve insulin resistance, because it will then it basically forces your body to utilize the energy and become more efficient in using what it's got, because this is not this constant ongoing giving of fuel, and it's not always there. So the body's got to become smarter and more effective and efficient at what it does to utilize energy. Exercise is really awesome as well for insulin resistance, and particularly high intensity exercise and strength training, because it makes our muscles more sensitive to insulin. And the oral contraceptive pill, can actually worsen insulin resistance. So if you have, I'm digressing a little bit, but PCOS, which is acne, is one of the very common symptoms for PCOS because of insulin resistance. Going on the pill, which a lot of people are advised to do so to regulate their PCOS, can actually worsen insulin resistance. So it's a bit of a catch-22. So you've got to go and go, okay, what's the root cause of the insulin resistance? Because it's not going to, these hormones aren't going to just magically balance themselves by taking oral contraceptive pill, because it's going to make the situation worse further on. So my advice to you is, if you have a skin, like if you're struggling with acne, you've got to get off the sugar and you've got to be really strict. Please be careful with things as well, like dried fruits, healthy snacks. I was at the supermarket this morning and you pick up, there's so many now, like bliss balls and pattern, you know, a few years ago there was heaps of paleo bars and stuff like this. A lot of these have dried dates in them. When you look at the sugar content in them, they're really high. Like there's a, you know, over, like I looked at one this morning, it was a bliss ball, it was like 15 grams of sugar in it, which is basically 3 teaspoons of sugar. And it's, yeah, it's in the form of a date, but it's still sugar. And when we're talking about acne, it's like, yeah, a little bit is okay, but, you know, if you're just having that and then you're having a diet, on your normal diet on top of that, and there would be sugar from other sources too, it ends up building up pretty quick. And your blood sugar levels are not going to be nice, stable throughout the day. And the way that I like to explain it sometimes is, think about if you've got a fire and you're putting on a fat log, or you're putting on kindling. Which would you prefer, and which is going to burn longer and be more consistent? Well, yeah, the kindling at first is fancy and it makes the fire look good and it makes the flames big, but it doesn't last very long, and then you've got to keep putting kindling on the fire. If you can get the heat up and then put a log on, you're like, okay, do I want to start my day with a big log and be able to consistently go out through the day and have periods of time where I don't need food to survive? It's one of the questions I ask my clients when they first start working with me is like, what's your reaction when you do miss a meal? Do you want to kill someone? Are you okay? And some people are like, no, I want to kill someone. I'm like, okay, well, we have a blood sugar regulation problem if you're at that point where you can't miss a meal and you get cranky and you feel like you're going to faint, or, you know, you're going to start World War III, excuse me. So it's really important to get on top of any hormonal issue, particularly with acne, okay? Number 2 is stress, inflammation, stress, cortisol. I'm talking about cortisol here, is one of the big drivers of inflammation. And cortisol, because cortisol is the stress hormone, and one of the stress hormones. And when we have elevated cortisol levels, we're in fight or flight a lot of the time, and our nervous system is in survival mode. And cortisol will then, the idea of cortisol is to give us quick energy to be able to survive. So from a primal point of view, and our brains are still have that primal function, cortisol is there to save us. If there's something that's coming towards us that's going to eat us, from a primal point of view, we need to be able to get the hell out of there. All our blood flow goes to our limbs so we can bolt. It doesn't go to our digestion, and it causes inflammation. It also it causes blood sugar levels basically to be produced. So you've got that quick surge of energy. But it also then, of course, as I was just talking about before, is more sebum gets produced in the top layers of your skin, so then more oil and more keratin gets produced, and then you get infections. So there's a direct relationship with stress and acne, and long-term cortisol will reduce insulin sensitivity. It also weakens the immune system, and it also can stop ovulation. So this is why getting on top of stress and regulating stress is so important. And when I'm talking about stress, I'm not just talking about the stress of all the externals we're exposed to. I'm talking about how you manage it and how you calm yourself down, and the meaning that you give things, because we've got all these different things coming at us and they're not life-threatening for the most part, but our body is behaving that way if we don't know how to regulate ourselves so that we can tell ourselves we're safe, because in that moment we don't feel safe. And often, if we're going to go deep, it's actually it's never about that moment. It's about a moment previous and the meaning that we gave it back then, and then we give meaning, that same meaning, to this moment, because there's an unresolved issue from the past where we didn't feel safe and we weren't safe in our body, and we give it that same meaning, and it comes down to I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not, like think about, and this is a good way to explain it, when we were a kid, if our needs weren't met, and this could be as simple as something like, imagine your mum or dad is on the phone and you run up to your mum and dad and you're like, mum, like, I want attention, and not right now, sweetheart, I'm on the phone. And because the part of our brain hasn't developed, we haven't developed that logic of understanding, that ability to understand and process and go, okay, mum, just because mum can't be there for me right now, it doesn't mean I'm good enough. We give it this meaning of I'm not lovable. And then we learn how to function in the world, to do things, to be able to get approval from other people so that we feel lovable, so that we feel safe. It's this whole deep embedded subconscious patterning that goes on. But what I'm trying to say is when we then get emotionally triggered, we go into stress response. It could be around money, it could be around relationships, it can be around just the way that we get pressured and we can't handle pressure, or the way that we react when the pressure gets big. And we give it this meaning of we're not worthy, we're not good enough. And we often put extra stress on ourselves. We're putting the pressure on ourselves because we're needing that external validation to feel safe and to feel loved, rather than giving it to ourselves. It's a very long-winded way of explaining it, but that's what happens. And so if we don't have the tools to regulate our nervous system, and we don't have the tools to move the emotion through the body, the emotion then gets stuck, which is like what happened to me. And I had all this emotion that was bubbling, and it was in my kidney, and it basically exploded. It was like this massive anger burst that was inside of me and that needed to release. Because leading up to before I got sick, and when I had my kidney tumor, I was incredibly angry, and I had this emotion that it was like literally it came out of me and exploded out of me. And then afterwards, I remember feeling like, I don't feel angry anymore. Yeah, because it got out. Like it left, got to leave the body. And so we've got to have ways to be able to move the emotion through the body. And so exercise, moving the body when we are stressed, and using the body and doing exercise, like particular practices that will get us into the body and move. So if we're feeling stressed, like even dancing around the kitchen or around, like yesterday I was doing, and I put my headphones on and I just danced and got it all out. It could be punching a pillow, it could be going for a run, it could be using movement. A lot of people use movement to move the energy through the body. But we've got to learn to be able to, first of all, just get that emotion out. It could be then crying, it could be being angry and punching a pillow, it could be screaming really loud. But the way that we can move then helps us regulate. Like we're dancing, we're moving, and dance is a really awesome way to do that and to change your state. And it gets that emotion. The other thing is like shaking, getting that emotion. That's why people use tapping as a tool. It's not a solution, but it's like EFT, because you're moving that energy out of the body. And the other tool that I like to use a lot is using the breath. So having breath processes in place to be able to regulate yourself, and those big diaphragmatic breaths of breathing in and letting out, and even sighing, like, or an omming, like a or a to calm your nervous system down and switch your parasympathetic nervous system on. And so we've got to learn the processes, and we've got to find tools and have tools that we're regularly practicing on a very consistent basis to be able to regulate ourselves, so that we're regulating the cortisol levels that we're dealing with, and constantly peeling back and looking at ourselves and being able to self-reflect on where we are, what stories we have got about certain things that are constantly being triggered, and stop blaming the outside world and actually turn inward and go, okay, all right, where do I need to look at myself with this? This is a huge part, and that's going to bring me into my third point with picking skin. This is one of the worst things you can do with acne, and it is a bit of everyone knows this fact that picking makes it worse, but with people who suffer from acne, and I can attest to this, there is something that can also be very, I'm going to say it's satisfying and stress relieving when you have pressure in your skin and you release it. And that to me is also understanding that we actually enjoy that release of pressure, and that and what it's taken me a long time to realize is that I didn't have other ways to release that pressure, and it can become quite addictive because that feeling of pressure release is really soothing. And so we've got to learn, it goes back to the regulating of the cortisol and stuff. We've got to learn how to do that in other ways, because the more we pick, the worse it makes. Now, one of the things I have to say for me is picking blackheads can also cause your skin to break out. And it's taken me a long time to learn this, because I can sometimes be a bit addicted to picking blackheads. And what I've realized for me, because my skin is sensitive, is when I pick blackheads, it causes me to break out. So really also making sure that you're not touching, because touching your skin is causing bacteria and the infection and the combination of that. I'm not even going to talk about skin care, but just that process of picking in itself is a vicious cycle. We get stressed about it, then it causes more sebum to be produced, then we get more breakouts, then we pick again. There's this vicious cycle that we've got to break to be able to get on top of the acne. And for me, I really think it's a little bit like I'm going to use the analogy of an orgasm, because that is also an emotional release, like an energetic release. And so it can be in some ways similar in terms of releasing the energy, not on the same level, but it can be more of a psychological addiction or outlet than us actually just squeezing it. So I wish someone had have told me that when I was 13 and had have actually helped me address it, because there's definitely something, and a lot of people can adhere to this, is going, when the pressure is, when you've got a lot of cystic acne and the pressure is huge, you just want the pressure to go away. And learning how to process and go through that can be, a game changer, as well as, but you've got to come underneath and start to reduce the inflammation and the things that are causing the breakouts in the first place. And then also know that, your picking is going to make it worse. So that is all I have. I hope you found that helpful. I know it can be really frustrating. If you feel like any of this resonated and you have more questions, please feel to reach out to me, or type like clear skin in the comments, and I'll reach out to you and we can have a conversation about what we can do to improve your skin and your acne, because I know how frustrating it can be, and it's part of a hormonal imbalance for a lot of us that is part of a bigger picture. It's not the only thing going on, but it's something that if you start doing these 3 things and really working on those 3 things, getting off the sugar, regulating your stress and not picking, it will make a massive difference to your skin and the way that your skin shows up. One other thing that I forgot to say is with bacteria, like some people can have, there's those reoccurring breakouts that won't go away. There can often be bacteria infections that won't really shift. And there's a herb called golden seal, which is really beautiful. It's very good for staph infections. But anyone that's got that reoccurring, finding they're constantly getting pimples in the same spot, some golden seal cream could actually be a really good way also to get on top of that infection, so that you then are not getting that constant breakout along with the other things that I mentioned. I found that recently with a few different people. I've used it and it's been quite helpful. You don't need huge amounts, but if there's areas that you are finding that you are constantly breaking out, and I had a couple of blackheads that I turned into pimples, and then I couldn't get rid of, and I found that golden seal actually really did wonders for it. So if that's the other option. That's just a little side note, and that might be really helpful. But yeah, if you got any questions, let me know. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I hope this supports you and leads you to clearer skin. All right, see you guys. Bye.